First, you're going to need to make an actor. This is going to be the platform, the elevator, whatever you want it to be. They all basically do the same thing. I'm going to make this as simple as possible, and you can make it more complex where you need it to be. Just going to name this platform comp and make it a sort of platform shape, like so. I'm going to get something to be able to be triggered by player interaction. So in this case, I'm just going to make some boxes to walk into. And I'm going to name them forward and backward. That's not quite right. Forward and backward comp. Right. Gonna need some variables. Gonna need a array of vectors. So if you do vector, click this little tablet looking thing and select it to be an array. Off this, you can make it an instance editable, and you're gonna make it show 3D widget. That is so you can position in the 3D in the world, like where the platform is going to travel to. Gonna need a location count, which is going to be a single. Start location. End location. Begin transform. And move locations cached, which is going to be a vector array, but it doesn't need to be instance editable. Shouldn't be. We're going to start from begin play. So if we think about it, so if we bring out the platform into the map, we're going to be able to set the travel destinations by doing this. They make these 3D widgets that you can position. So if I go back to where I was here, I can actually click this and drag it wherever I want. So say I actually wanted to make this like an elevator. The 0 is going to stay at 0. The next one's going to be 500. One after that will be 1,000. And then one after that will be 1,500. And then I'll be doing 4 floors, if that makes sense. So you can see here, there's locations going up in the z-axis. So how are we going to translate these locations and move the platform and have it replicate? Well, I'll show you. Let's set the location count to the length of the move locations. So this just gets 4 in this case because it's just getting the amount inside the array. Then we're going to set the begin transform, which is just going to be this actor's transform. Then do a for each loop on the move locations. So if I do for each, and I make transform, compose this, which is how we get it from being relative to the platform to be in world space, and we just get begin transform. We then add these locations to the move locations cached. So these move locations that you picked with the array have now been cached in world space with this method. I've actually got to not do that, not this, that's incorrect. Do break transform, and off the result, take the location. Now to visualize this, to make sure this is correct, you can do a draw box, draw debug box. The center be the location result. The extent doesn't really matter. I'll put it as 555 and I'll make the color blue. The duration, I'll set it for 60. Thickness 5. This is only really for debug purposes. You wouldn't want this usually. But that's all we got to do on begin play. Next we'll tackle the main bulk of the code. Get it out of the way. So this is going to be handling moving forward and backwards. So we're going to need move forward. That's not how you spell forward. That doesn't look right either. There we go, that looks better. Move backward. And we're going to need to do some index in here. So we need an index. I didn't make one, so we're going to have to make an index. And this is how we're going to go traverse the array. So we're just going to need a location index. I'm going to set it to a single. I'm going to set it to an array, to an integer. So we want the location index. If it is less than the location count, which I should be setting here, which is the length of the move locations. Because the length, it doesn't start from 0 like move location index does. If I compile, you see this starts from 0. So for this to actually be correct, it has to be minus by 1. So it starts from 0 as well. Okay. So if it's less than the max amount, then it's fine. You can just set the location index as the result of this. Oh, no, I forgot to do one step here. Because the goal here is to get to the next part of the array, do +1, and that is now the result when it's below the location limit, the location count limit. However, if it is above, so now it's past the location limit, I'm going to reset it back down to 0. So that means if it goes above, it's going to go back down. If it goes to 3, it's going to go to 0. So it goes right back down to the bottom. Or if it was if it was platforms going around in a square, then like the platform locations in the square, then it would go back to the start. Next, we're going to do the move backwards. So this is similar. So we can probably just copy this, but we've got to change some things. So obviously it's not going to be add, it's going to be subtract. Subtract 1. And I'm going to need to do a greater than comparison. And if it's greater than the location count -1, again, so if it's not above the count limit, then gonna instead set the index as the correct one, and then but if it is not, so if it's not, then we're going to do this. So this is setting it to the other side of the array, the very top array element. Next, we're going to be setting the start and end locations. Start location is just going to be the actor location, get actor location. The next one is going to be the array, the index of the move locations cached. So if I do get a copy, we only need a copy because we're not changing the elements inside the array. Get the index, the location index, and just plug that into end location. From here, this is all the correct data, but we now need to actually move the platform. For that, I'm going to use a timeline. Timelines are really great, especially when it comes to latency problems. If you use tick, I've used ticking before and had lots of latency problems, so I usually default to using timelines. I'm going to set it as an RPC that replicates for everyone, a multicast. I'm going to do add timeline and call this movement timeline. Double click it, add a float, not that track, add a float track and just call it alpha or movement alpha. I'm going to add 2 keys. One's going to be slap bang on 0. Make sure it is, you have to click enter. And the other one's going to be on 1 second with the value 1. And the length of this is going to be 1. So it's going to look something like this. That's all we need to do for that. So let's just close that down. Every time we want it to play from the start, and we're going to do a vector, so v lerp, and just plug in the start location and the end location. I'm going to do set actor location. And that's all we really need to do for this. So that's going to alert from point A to point B. There is one more thing. So every time you do up or down, it's usually going to be the same distance. If it isn't the same distance, what you need to do is you need to balance it. You need to set the play rate of the timeline. Otherwise, each time the distance is different, the speed's going to be different. And that's the main issues with doing it with a timeline. Really easy fix, which isn't a perfect fix, is get the start and end location and subtract them to, from each other. Vector and get the vector length. Get the absolute version of this, so it doesn't matter what way around you subtract, it's always going to be positive. That's what absolute does, it gets the positive version. We're going to get a map ranged and a clamped version. And in my case, the furthest distance that one could be from another one is 1500. You could do a calculation to calculate which one's the furthest one, or like the furthest the distance from, you know, one point to another, and use that as the B range here, the in B range. Then you're going to want it to set it to 1, and a good value I found for this distance is 0.25, but this is a variable that you probably want to like do outrange B. You could probably change it to something else like lowest timeline rate, and make it a instance editable, so you could change the variable a lot faster. I'll show you how if you don't know. You can do it in the editor. Okay, so now all we got to do left is a way to trigger it, I believe. We're playing the timeline, we're setting it on begin play. We just have to have a way to trigger it. So the way I'm doing that is through my box components right here. So I'm going to make them visible just for debugging purposes. I'm also going to make them different colors. I always forget which color is, which one's what color, but I'm going to try to remember. So forward is blue, and backward I'm going to make red. Or a pink. Pink will do fine. Make the line thickness 5 just so I can see it a bit better. And this is where you could change it, but I'm going to be doing it on begin play, begin overlap. There's also, because I'm doing this on begin overlap, you may want to do this too, is I'm going to make sure when move forward or move backward is called that the timeline is not playing. Because if it's playing, that means it's moving. And we don't want to allow calls before it's done moving. Unless you do. But I don't in this case. So just to stop that happening, get is playing on a branch. And off the false execution pin, just line that into the indexing code here, and that will prevent the player from being able to move the elevator or platform before it's done moving. Because we're doing this, we're replicating this, we're going to use this node, switch has authority, because these begin overlaps are always called on server and client. So we want this to be only off authority. Check if this actor is valid. You can also check if this is the player. Way I like to do that is actor has tag, and you just add a tag like this. You just add this to the player, and then every time you want to query if this is the player, you just do that. I'm not going to do that. I have no need to do that because it's not really a finished game, but that would be a bug. Just to let you know. Okay. So off this, all I'm going to call is move forward and move backward. Hope that all made sense. And I'm going to give it a try. See if there's any bugs. So this is the server. And this is the client. Okay, so I didn't move these, it looks like. Yeah, I need to move these triggers from each other a little bit. So I just press W to be able to move them from the rotation axes there, if you didn't know. It's W ER to toggle through them. Right, so I'm going to click play. If I remember correctly, the blue one is to go up. Okay, doesn't seem to be working. Why is that? And I know exactly why. Did the classic, I didn't set it to replicate. So tick this replicates box. If you click the very top of this hierarchy and type replicate, you can hit the replicates checkbox right there, and that will tell the engine to watch this actor's changes and report it to the other clients. So now I click here. Okay, still doesn't want to work. Interesting. Let's have a look. Why? Is this the correct platform? This is the correct platform. Why wouldn't it work? So I'm hitting move forward. Best thing to do would be to step through the code. So I'm gonna add a toggle. I'm gonna put a breakpoint on this. So just click here to add a breakpoint. Walk into it, and it's not being called. So that means the trigger is the issue here. Oh, I've just realized I've got these backwards. I don't think that would be causing the issue though. Oh wait, that would make sense. why move forward wasn't being called. Let me just see if it is working or not. Okay. Alright. Huh. But it should work regardless. Oh, okay, so I'm not calling play timeline. That would make a lot of sense to why it's not moving. So, the debugging worked. I found out why the problem wasn't working. Now, if I walk into this, or this, oh my lord, that did not work. So, the reason for that is, I need to set some of these variables as replicated. Because this is only being called on move forward and things, is only being called, these two functions are only being called on server. On the server, so we need to set these as replicated so the client can access these, the data, the correct data set by the server. This also, in the server client model, prevents cheating. It prevents the client being able to change data, manipulate data. That's what you ideally want. Okay. So now if I walk into this, that looks like it's going the wrong direction again. Why would that be? So location and location is set to replicate. It looks like it's to do with the setting of the location. So am I doing something wrong? Is the move location supposed to be replicated? I don't think so. So if I look at the debug, okay, so the correct the boxes, the debug boxes are in the correct positions, it looks like. So I don't know why. Oh, now it's decided to work. Did I not click compile or something? Anyway, doesn't matter. So that takes me back down to the bottom, you see. So I go to the top. I hit these, I walk into the trigger box, I go to the top. You can see it's smoothly moving up. It's not jittering. Look on the server. I'm moving it on the client, so, and then it's going to move all the way back down, and the speed seems slightly faster than it should be. And you'll know what I mean if I go to the platform, not here, in the details panel. We have this lowest timeline rate. So this is when you're moving the furthest distance. So if I set this to 0.1, or no, if I set this to 1, this would display what I'm talking about. So if I walked into this one, it should take me right to the top. Oh, okay, I don't know why that is happening. 000 saying there's a problem. No, it's going to 1500. That doesn't seem to be working correctly. I must have been doing the indexing incorrectly somehow. Let me have a little look. Okay, yeah, I'm doing something wrong here. So it looks like this should be -1 here. That is totally my fault there. It makes sense because I'm minusing here. So I'm checking with this greater than, that it is greater than -1, so it has to be 0. If it's not, if it's below that, then I want it to be not in location index. I've also done that incorrectly. I want it to be the location count -1 because I want it to be the top of the array. And if you spotted that, well done to you, because I did not spot that. Okay, so now if I walk into this, it's going to take me right to the top. Right to the very top. And you see how fast that was compared to taking... Oh, that took me right to the bottom. But if I go to the next layer up, you can see it was considerably faster going from the top to the bottom. And that's why this lowest time rate variable and the code we did for that helps balance it. There is probably better ways of doing it. But, so that was going up to 1 floor. If I go back down, that's going to 1 floor again. So if I move back on the client, I can really see what's going on. So that's taking me all the way to the top, and I think that's about right. That's taking me all the way down to the bottom, as you can see. And I click this again. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. If I click this to go down 1 floor. Okay, I'm really not doing this correctly. If I click this, go to 1 floor, like this, you can see that's about the same speed as going to all the floors. You can play around with that variable and play around with how you interact with it and some other stuff, and let me know what you thought. One more thing I want to talk about is, so there's this thing called network emulation in Unreal, and this is how you simulate latency. Now, I've set this to ridiculous values. If you go to the link in the description, I have a I have the Unreal website with the actual information on how to use network emulation, and they recommend some values on there. But I've just done some silly values that are ridiculously high. It would never really be this ridiculously high. It would probably kick you out before it'd get this high. So you can see it took the client a long time to load in. If I am to use the elevator like this, it's going to be a slight delay on the client, but the client's experience isn't negative. So I go down, it goes down. It takes a couple of seconds for it to happen, which, depending on your game, might be a really negative thing. But you got to remember how high the latency is. And there you have it, fellas. I hope that helped. Any questions, leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get to you. Thanks for watching.